Before we start the episode proper, I need to acknowledge one game that was removed from my worst 100 list because of stuff that I played outside of this show. The game being Super Bomberman 5, the last in the Bomberman's Super Nintendo quintology that has a steady playability, but I personally didn't like its open structure. It makes the experience repetitive. Now on to one of the big ones. Yes, the successful Kickstarter that was aimed to bring light to darkness to those who were distraught by action platformer franchise Mega Man's long absence. But when the game was finally released in 2016, it instead left them crying like anime fans on prom night. In the 90s, when like in anime wasn't as popular. Here's none other than Mighty Number 9.
The main creative force behind the game, who is credited as conceptor, is Keiichi Inafune, an industry veteran who forged most of his resume at Capcom, where he has his hand in all mainline Mega Man games from 1 to 10 and some spin-offs here and there. However, it seems to be a common misconception that he was a bigger part in the creative progress, as for most of the series he was a character designer and was much more profiled as a producer for its role-playing spin-off Battle Network, and few other Capcom juggernauts like Resident Evil 4 and Street Fighter 4. There are other people in important positions for this game as well, but Mr. Inafune has stated to take full responsibility for the project's failure, so I shall respect his wishes and not subject anyone else from the dev team to my cutting wit.
While the game's reputation among internet reviewers is in bottom marks, its Steam user percentage of 58 positives leans more towards middling. Though the PC version's 52 Metacritic score does bring it to that year's bottom 50. The opening menus does make it lean more towards
It's the year 20 in the United States of America, where the advancements in robotics have brought peace and prosperity. Until they all go haywire! Well, almost all, as one of the few still normally functioning is the titular Mighty Number, a helpful gladiator combat robot Beck, played by Yuri Lowenthal, and he is on the case. As he talks about this with his creator Dr. William White, played by Jason Spisak, we get the first sample of this game's awkwardly clumsy cutscenes presented in stiff graphics. Some reviewers have given their art reserved positiveness by comparing it to Dreamcast games, and I suppose it's colorful, but whenever looking at the static character faces, it's one of the prime examples of how some 2D designs don't translate to 3D. I mean, in concept and promotional art they have some soul instead of no soul. Also, most of the effects look cheap. Prime example being the one the legends are made of: pizza explosions.
Over the years I've seen this grand symbol of cutting corners in videos by people I semi-regularly watch, but when I got to witness it in live gameplay, there was something magical, like I was part of a community. But let's get back to the story that not many reviewers said anything about, surprisingly. Though the story is rather whatever ordeal.
During this crisis, the Scott White played Gregory Graham, who is the CEO of the world's leading robotics manufacturer Cherry Dynamics. Film claims that the culprit behind this whole play of errors is a doctor named Blackwell, and our company has nothing to do with it, we swear. Except that this is all said without any evidence, and Dr. Blackwell has been in a maximum security prison for a few years already, so no one with half a brain cell buys it. Too bad the only ones with a half a brain cell are Dr. White and his annoyingly bumbling and narratively pointless colleague Soichiro Sanda, played by Dave Wittenberg, and even then they are all like, this is sus, but not sure how yet. During the part where Beck goes to snap out his fellow mighty companions from Circuit Mania, a part that is usually where the plot progression stops to a halt in a typical Mega Man fare, the doctors take a more active role in trying to solve the mystery and coin the secrets Dr. White harbors from his past, so much that it's easy to forget who this game is named after. This is all frosted with a combination of clumsy dialogue and, shall we say, interesting voice acting. And while at least the latter is better in quality than the game's source of inspiration tended to have, There's annoying abundance of corny jokes, squiggly developer puns, and performances so over the top it makes Flame High Nard seem subtle in comparison.
Burn! The world must burn!
Pretty much the only cast member that manages to escape unscathed is Steve Blum playing a Mighty No. 8 Countersaid, an espionage robot planning on Robot Revolution who does it with cool silky smoothness.
Emancipation is worth any price, even if it costs human lives. More yours.
The mere existence of voice acting is indicative of this game's chaotic production cycle, because it was one of those features that the developers asked money for after the initial Kickstarter, and apparently not many people wanted it. But I get it from an artistic standpoint. If there wasn't any voice acting, then cutscenes would have felt even more awkward. But let's get then to the often reviled gameplay, where the Mighty No. Neo has to face his robot siblings in any order the player wants and absorb their abilities, although all they have certain specific weakness abilities, so the player has to figure out the optimal order, or that's how I've understood the Mega Man formula. Oh, that's right, I've actually never played any Mega Man game. This is like if someone wanted to watch James Bond movies for the first time, but their starting point was never say never again.
This game has its own addition in that the cured mighties will give help in certain levels that coincidentally happen to be the ones where the not robot master that has the weakness to their abilities resides. This has been stated as one of the biggest gripes for removing an important element to the formula, but as I will later show, that's not that big of an advantage as you may think. Therefore, the challenge is less about the optimal order of levels and more about where to start. I first tried to go in numerical order, but the level design that was merely uninspired at the tutorial stage will soon reveal its devious tricks, starting with insta-death pits and continuing with insta-death traps. This is bad because loading the latest save point takes time, and there's 9 lives maximum, and if those run out, then you have to start the level from the beginning. The level design doesn't support the moveset that has dashing ability that suggests fast gameplay, but Tenpek's walking speed is too slow to make it feel smooth. Not to mention some of these traps come up without warning. So these issues and bosses that some have insta-death attacks, and should I would get my ass handed to me during the first 3 levels, at which point I was worried if I was able to get to 1/3 of the game completed requirement I had set for myself. Thankfully I switched to reverse order and managed to beat Countersaid, though the lack of bottomless pits in White House helped a lot. This whole trying to defeat at least one boss room took me 2.5 hours.
I've heard that some of the older Mega Man games, especially the 8-bit ones, were quite hard as well, so was it really like this? I understand that this game is made to be an homage to them, but it often felt like the dev team considers hard and unfair to be interchangeable terms. Moving forward was just nervous tippy-tongue, and some of the games that I've reviewed in the past had that problem as well, but it was mostly because of small screen size. It wasn't this.
The before-mentioned dash mechanic is crucial in battles, because after dealing enough damage it can be used to instantly drain an enemy's life force, thus giving back temporary power-ups. This has been reviled for making playing unevenly paced, but I don't actually mind it, for I think it to be a decent if flawed risk versus reward system. It does add some extra tactility to boss fights, because you need to be smart about when it's the right time to use dash for taking a chunk of their health, because otherwise they regain it back soon. There are frustration causing elements like the before mentioned bottomless pits and one-hit kill attacks, though with some cases like with Mighty No. 1 Pirate Gen it was more of a skill issue. Once I got the pattern down it wasn't that big of a deal. Also the weapons its number are weak against work inconsistently. Some decimate their opponents in seconds, while other times they are impractical. Like this bulldozer ram against Mighty No. 7 Brandis, a clumsy melee attack against a boss relying on melee attacks you want to avoid.
Then at the penultimate level, the special weapons are suddenly required for puzzle solving, at which point I was like, yeah, I've said all the robot masters, I'm good, thanks. I probably won't bother to finish this because while it has minuscule amounts of good ideas, Mighty Number 9 never felt fun.
I'm more merciful towards some of the game's mechanics like dashing that has good utilizations, and I guess the music is passable. Other than that, this game suffers from infuriating level design meant for a completely different character, childish whatever plot that doesn't flesh out much of his cast, plasticky lifeless art, and gameplay that is too fast and too slow at the same time. I have never played its source of inspiration, but even I am able to recognize that this fascinatingly confused clash of old school and modern design philosophies misses what made those games popular so much that I feel I need to buy Mega Man 11 as an apology. I'm not sure who am I apologizing to, but my conscience is persistent about it.
After this internet multimedia franchise imploded in its cradle, Mr. Inafune has kept low profile, though is slowly getting back to producing with such titles as last year's Azure Striker Gunvolt 3. Beck surprisingly got a happy ending with the same team's 2017 crossover title Mighty Gunvolt Burst that has him as a playable character, though with much more refined gameplay. I haven't played it, but what I looked up, people seem to like it, so why he didn't manage to conquer the world, at least he got a cozy little island for his retirement days. Meanwhile, this sum of many unfortunate parts managed to knock out the game from my bottom 100 list on its own, and that game was Tales of Destiny. Yes, the second entry to the popular role-playing franchise that hasn't aged well. I mean, the combat can sometimes be engaging, but there's just too much of it. And the story and the characters aren't that fleshed out, but maybe it was lost in translation. At least there's no Dr. Sanda in the cast, thank God.
20XX, we living in the future now. Getting by a little better than we used to now. But it ain't all good, cause my hood's in a panic, so the government suggested robotic enhancements. It's the level of the playing field, but they ain't playing fair, so they be forced to yield. Dr. White made 9 siblings, called the mighty numbers to boost competition. Always in the top.